I've kept this secret for 4 years, but now I'm ready.
The phone rang at 2:36 a.m., cutting through the silence like a rusty blade through flesh. I knew it was trouble before I even opened my eyes. Good news never comes at 3 in the morning. Dad? Sophie's voice cracked through the speaker, barely audible over sirens wailing in the background. We're in trouble. Mom picked up some guy at the bar and... There's been an accident. The cops are here. I sat up in bed, the empty space beside me suddenly making perfect sense. Dana hadn't come home again. 3rd time this week. Where are you? Route 9, near the old mill. Dad, there's blood everywhere. The drive to the crash site felt like swimming through molasses. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white, while my mind raced through possibilities. None of them were good. Red and blue lights painted the night in harsh colors when I arrived. 2 ambulances, 3 cop cars, and a fire truck surrounded the twisted remains of Dana's BMW. The front end was wrapped around an oak tree like aluminum foil. I found Sophie sitting in the back of an ambulance, a paramedic cleaning cuts on her forehead. She looked small and fragile, nothing like the confident college sophomore who'd left for winter break just 2 weeks ago. Daddy! She threw herself into my arms, and I held her tight, breathing in the scent of her shampoo mixed with antiseptic and fear. What happened, sweetheart? Mom was drinking at Murphy's bar. She met this guy, Calvin something. They were all over each other, and she insisted he come with us. I begged her to call a cab, but she said she was fine to drive. Sophie's voice shook. He kept grabbing at her while she was driving. I screamed at them to stop, and then we hit the tree. Detective Linda Grady approached us, her face grim. I'd known Linda since high school, back when she was Linda Kowalski, and had a crush on my younger brother Tom. Jack, we need to talk. She led me away from Sophie, toward the wreckage. Your wife's in critical condition. Severe head trauma, internal bleeding. They're airlifting her to Portland General. And the guy? Calvin Ames, 38, multiple priors for assault and drug possession. We found cocaine in his jacket and a switchblade in his boot. Linda's expression darkened. You want to know the interesting part? He's been a client at your wife's law firm for the past 3 years. The world tilted sideways. What? Gets better. We found his phone. Text messages between him and Dana going back 18 months. Very intimate messages. Linda handed me a printout. I'm sorry, Jack. I stared at the paper, my wife's words burning into my retinas. Messages about hotel rooms, about lies she'd told me, about how she couldn't wait to feel Calvin's hands on her body again. There's more, Linda said quietly. The accident? It wasn't random. Calvin was high on cocaine and tried to grab the wheel. Your daughter probably saved all their lives by screaming when she did. The rage hit me like a freight train, but I pushed it down. Sophie needed me focused, not falling apart. Where is he now? County lockup, possession charges, reckless endangerment. He'll be there for a while. I looked back at Sophie, still sitting in the ambulance, staring at nothing. My 20-year-old daughter had nearly died because my wife was screwing around with a criminal. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. Dad? Sophie walked over, her face pale. Is Mom going to be okay? I don't know, sweetheart. But we're going to get through this. As we drove to the hospital, following the ambulance carrying Dana's broken body, I couldn't shake Linda's words. 18 months of text messages, 3 years as a client. How long had I been living a lie? The hospital waiting room smelled like disinfectant and despair. Harsh fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. Sophie curled up in a plastic chair, finally asleep after the doctor assured us she had no serious injuries. I sat alone with Dana's purse, which the paramedics had given me. Her phone kept buzzing with messages. Against my better judgment, I looked. The first message was from Calvin, sent just hours before the accident. Can't wait to taste you again, baby. Your husband's such a pathetic loser. Dana's response. Soon. Jack's so clueless it's almost sad. After tonight we can be more open about us. My hands started shaking. I scrolled through weeks of messages, each one a dagger to the heart. Photos I never wanted to see. Plans they'd made behind my back. Jokes about what an idiot I was. Jack? I looked up to see my brother Tom rushing toward us, still in his expensive suit despite the early hour. Tom was everything I wasn't. Successful lawyer, perfect family, golden boy who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. Sophie called me, he said, pulling me into a hug. How is she? Dana's in surgery. Sophie's okay, just shaken up. I studied his face, looking for something I couldn't name. How did you get here so fast? Tom hesitated for just a second. I was working late at the office. Got here as soon as I could. Something felt off, but I was too exhausted to figure out what. We sat in silence, watching the clock tick toward dawn, waiting for news about whether my wife would live or die. Dr. Martinez emerged from surgery at 6:15 a.m., still in his scrubs. She's stable, but it's touch and go. Severe traumatic brain injury, internal bleeding. We've induced a coma to reduce brain swelling. The next 48 hours are critical. Can I see her? Family only, and just for a few minutes. I followed him down sterile corridors to the ICU. Dana lay motionless, connected to a web of tubes and wires. Her face was swollen beyond recognition, purple bruises covering her skin like a map of violence. Looking at her, I felt nothing. No love, no concern, no fear of losing her. Just a cold, empty space where my heart used to be. The woman I'd loved for 22 years was a stranger who'd been playing me for a fool. I leaned close to her ear and whispered, I know about Calvin. I know about all of it. When you wake up, we're going to have a very different conversation. Chapter 2. Digging up the dead. Sophie and I went home as the sun rose over our quiet neighborhood. The house felt different now, like a crime scene waiting to be discovered. Everything looked the same, Dana's coffee cup still in the sink, her reading glasses on the kitchen counter, but it all felt like props in an elaborate lie. Dad? Sophie stood in the doorway, looking lost. Can we talk? We sat at the kitchen table where we'd shared thousands of meals as a family. The morning light streaming through the windows felt like an interrogation lamp. I need to tell you something, Sophie said, her voice barely above a whisper. About Mom and Calvin. This wasn't the first time. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? I've known for years, since I was 16. I came home early from school one day and found them together, in your bedroom. Tears streamed down her face. Mom begged me not to tell you. She said it was just a mistake, that it would destroy our family if you knew. Jesus, Sophie, why didn't you? Because I was 16 and scared. She's my mother. She convinced me I'd be breaking up the family, that you'd leave us both. Sophie's voice cracked. But it wasn't just Calvin. There were others. So many others. I felt like I was drowning. How many others? I don't know exactly. Maybe 6 or 7 over the years. Usually guys from her work, sometimes clients. She'd tell you she was working late, but she was with them. The betrayal was so complete, so systematic, that I almost laughed. Almost. And you kept this secret for 4 years? I wanted to tell you so many times, but every time I worked up the courage, she'd do something nice for you, or you'd seem happy, and I'd lose my nerve. Sophie grabbed my hand. I'm so sorry, Dad. I should have told you. I pulled her into a hug. This isn't your fault, sweetheart. None of it. But inside, I was burning. Not just at Dana, but at the whole rotten situation. My daughter had been carrying this burden for years while I played the devoted husband to a woman who saw me as a joke. After Sophie went to bed, I called in sick to work and started digging. If Dana wanted to play games, I'd learn the rules. Her laptop was password protected, but I knew her well enough to guess. Sophie's birthday, followed by her mother's maiden name. Pathetic. Her email was a treasure trove of deception. Hundreds of messages to her friend Rachel, detailing affairs going back to our 10th anniversary. Messages about hotel rooms charged to the firm's account. Photos I deleted immediately after seeing them. One email thread made my blood run cold. Rachel: "Aren't you worried Jack will find out?" Dana: "Jack? Please. He's so wrapped up in his little engineering projects, he wouldn't notice if I brought someone home and screwed them on the kitchen table. Besides, what's he going to do? Leave me? He'd never see Sophie again, and he knows it." Rachel: "You're playing with fire." Dana: "I'm playing with a man who thinks love conquers all. It's almost too easy. I printed everything. Every email, every photo, every cruel joke at my expense. The stack of papers grew until it looked like evidence for a war crimes trial. My phone rang. Tom: "How are you holding up, brother?" "I've been better. Listen, I need a favor. Can you recommend a good divorce attorney?" Silence on the other end. "Jack, don't you think you should wait until Dana recovers before making any major decisions?" "I found out about the affairs, Tom. All of them. This marriage is over." "Affairs? What are you talking about?" I told him about Calvin, about Sophie's confession, about the emails. Tom listened without interrupting, making sympathetic noises at all the right moments. "I'm sorry, Jack. I had no idea Dana was capable of something like this." "Yeah, well, apparently I was the only one who didn't know. Look, I know a guy, Eddie Palumbo. He's not the most reputable lawyer in town, but he's effective, especially in messy divorce cases." "Fast Eddie? Didn't he get disbarred for bribing witnesses?" "That was never proven. And the suspension was lifted 2 years ago. Trust me, if you want to hit back hard, Eddie's your guy." I met Eddie Palumbo at his office above a pawn shop downtown. He looked exactly like what you'd expect from a lawyer who operated in the gray areas: cheap suit, gold tooth, and the moral flexibility of a carnival barker. "Tom filled me in on the basics," Eddie said, lighting a cigarette despite the no-smoking sign on his own wall. "Wife's been playing hide the salami with half the city while you played house. Classic case. I want to destroy her, legally, financially, professionally. I want her to lose everything." Eddie grinned. "Music to my ears. But first, we need to talk about your daughter. Custody's going to be the key battleground. Sophie's 20. She can choose where she wants to live. True, but there's still the matter of support, inheritance, all that jazz. Plus, if we can prove Dana's an unfit mother, it strengthens our position across the board." We spent 2 hours going through my evidence. Eddie's eyes lit up like Christmas morning as he reviewed the emails and photos. "This is good stuff, Jack. Really good. But I need more. Financial records, phone records, anything that shows she was using marital assets to fund her extracurricular activities." "How do I get that?" "Leave that to me. I've got a guy who specializes in digital archaeology. Give me a week." I left Eddie's office feeling something I hadn't felt in years: hope, not for reconciliation, but for justice. The hospital called that evening. Dana was awake. I found her propped up in bed, looking like she'd gone 10 rounds with Mike Tyson. Her eyes were unfocused, but she recognized me. "Jack?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Hello, Dana. How are you feeling?" "Terrible. What happened? Where's Sophie?" "You crashed your car while driving drunk with your boyfriend." "Sophie's fine, no thanks to you." Dana's eyes widened. "Boyfriend? What are you talking about?" "Calvin Ames, your client, your lover, the drug dealer you've been screwing for the past 18 months. Jack, I don't know what you think you know, but..." I pulled out my phone and showed her one of her own text messages. Her face went white. "We're getting divorced," I said calmly. "I'm taking the house, the savings, everything. You can have your boyfriend and your lies. You can't do this. I'm injured. I need time to recover. You had 22 years to recover from being a cheating whore. Time's up." I walked out of her room and didn't look back. The war had officially begun. Chapter 3. The Nest of Lies. Eddie's digital archaeology guy turned out to be a 20-something hacker named Kevin, who looked like he hadn't seen sunlight in years. But the kid was thorough. "Your wife's been busy," Kevin said, handing me a thick folder. Credit card records show charges at 17 different hotels over the past 2 years. Always the same pattern. Afternoon check-ins, 3-hour stays, cash payments to avoid paper trails. 17 hotels? That's just what I could track. She was smart about mixing personal and business accounts, but not smart enough. Kevin pulled out another stack of papers. Here's where it gets interesting. She's been funneling money to Calvin Ames through her law firm, fake consulting fees, bogus expense reimbursements. We're talking about $40,000 over 3 years. My head spun. She stole from the firm? Technically, she stole from you. Joint account signatures, remember? But yeah, her partners aren't going to be happy when they find out their money went to keeping a drug dealer and spending cash. Eddie leaned back in his chair, grinning like a shark. This keeps getting better. Adultery, theft, endangering a child. We've got enough ammunition to blast her into orbit. What about Calvin? Can we use his criminal record? Already working on it. His arraignment's next week. I've got a friend in the DA's office who owes me a favor. The arraignment was held in the old courthouse downtown, a granite monument to justice that had seen better days. I sat in the back row, watching Calvin Ames shuffle into the courtroom in an orange jumpsuit and shackles. He looked different from the crime scene photos, smaller, more pathetic. Without his leather jacket and attitude, he was just another middle-aged loser who'd gotten in over his head. The charges were read: possession of cocaine with intent to distribute, reckless endangerment, violation of parole. Calvin's public defender looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. How does the defendant plead? Not guilty, Your Honor. I almost laughed out loud. The guy was caught red-handed with drugs and a weapon, but he was going to fight it. Good. That meant a trial, which meant more opportunities to expose Dana's involvement. As the court adjourned, Calvin turned around and scanned the gallery. When his eyes met mine, he smirked and mouthed something that looked like "dead man." I stood up and walked toward him, ignoring the bailiffs. "You got something to say to me, Calvin?" His smirk faltered as I got closer. I was 6 inches taller and 50 pounds heavier, and I'd spent 20 years in construction before moving to engineering. Calvin was all mouth and no muscle. "Your wife's a whore," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're right," I replied. "But she's also broke now, and you're going to prison. So who's the real loser here?" I walked away before he could respond, but I felt his eyes burning into my back. Let him stew on that for a while. Dana was released from the hospital a week later, moving in with her sister across town. She'd called the house several times, but I let the machine take her messages. Sophie refused to talk to her. "I can't forgive her, Dad," Sophie said over dinner. "Not just for the cheating, but for making me keep her secrets. For putting me in that car with Calvin. She could have gotten me killed. You don't have to forgive her, sweetheart. But you might want to consider talking to someone about all this. A therapist, maybe." Sophie nodded. "I've been thinking about that. But first, I want to help you make her pay. This isn't your fight. Yes, it is. She destroyed our family. She lied to both of us for years. I want her to face consequences." That weekend, Sophie and I went through Dana's home office, looking for anything Eddie could use. We found bank statements, client files, and a locked drawer in her desk. "Stand back," I said, grabbing a crowbar from my toolbox. The drawer contained a second cell phone, a burner she'd used for her affairs. The call log read like a directory of Dana's greatest hits: Calvin, 3 other men I didn't recognize, and dozens of calls to the same number. I dialed the number. Tom answered. "Hello?" I hung up without saying anything. Sophie looked at me strangely. "Dad? What's wrong?" "Nothing. Just thought I recognized a number." But my mind was racing. Why was Dana calling Tom so frequently? They'd never been particularly close. He was my brother, not hers. That night, I drove to Tom's house in the suburbs. His BMW was in the driveway, and the lights were on in his home office. I parked across the street and waited. At 11:30 p.m., Dana's sister's car pulled up. Dana got out, still moving carefully from her injuries, and walked to Tom's front door. He let her in without turning on the porch light. I sat there for 2 hours, watching their silhouettes move past the windows. They weren't looking at legal documents or discussing strategy. They were standing close together, touching, kissing. My own brother. The golden boy who'd always been Mom and Dad's favorite, who'd given the toast at my wedding, who'd been Sophie's godfather. He was sleeping with my wife. I drove home in a daze, my mind trying to process this new betrayal. How long had it been going on? Was Tom one of the others Sophie had mentioned? The next morning, I called Eddie with the news. "Your brother?" "Jesus, Jack, this family's more twisted than a pretzel factory." "How does this change things legally?" "It complicates the custody situation, since Tom's Sophie's godfather. But it also gives us more ammunition. Alienation of affection, conspiracy, emotional distress. We can hit them both. I want to destroy them, both of them." "Easy there, Rambo. Let's be smart about this. We go after Dana first, get the divorce finalized, then we can deal with your brother." But I was done being smart. I was done playing by rules that nobody else seemed to follow. Dana and Tom wanted to play dirty? Fine. I'd show them what dirty really looked like. That afternoon, I drove to Tom's office downtown. His secretary tried to stop me, but I walked past her and into his corner office. Tom looked up from his desk, startled. "Jack? What are you doing here?" "We need to talk, brother." I closed the door behind me and sat down across from his desk. Tom's office was everything mine wasn't. Expensive furniture, awards on the walls, a view of the harbor, success built on lies and betrayal. "I saw you last night," I said calmly. "With Dana." Tom's face went white. "Jack, I can explain." "Can you? Can you explain how long you've been screwing my wife? Can you explain how you looked me in the eye at family dinners while you were planning your next hookup?" "It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. The question is, how long has it been going on?" Tom stared at his hands. 3 years. 3 years. I felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. "So while I was working 60-hour weeks to pay for Sophie's college, you were banging my wife." "Jack, please." "Does Sophie know?" "No. God, no. We've been careful." "Careful?" I stood up, and Tom flinched. "You call getting caught by your own brother being careful?" I walked around his desk until I was standing over him. Tom shrank back in his chair like a guilty child. "Here's what's going to happen," I said quietly. "You're going to stay away from Dana. You're going to stay away from me. And if you ever come near Sophie again, I'll make sure everyone in this town knows what kind of man you really are." "You can't threaten me." "I'm not threatening you, Tommy. I'm promising you." I walked out of his office, leaving him sitting there like a broken man. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Chapter 4. Family Values. The DNA test results arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by certified mail like a death warrant. I stared at the envelope for 10 minutes before opening it, knowing that whatever was inside would change everything. Sophie wasn't my biological daughter. The numbers didn't lie. 20 years of bedtime stories, school plays, scraped knees, and proud moments, all built on a foundation of deception. The little girl who'd called me daddy, who'd inherited what I thought were my eyes and my stubborn streak, was genetically a stranger. I sat in my kitchen, surrounded by the debris of my shattered life, and tried to figure out how to breathe. The test results included a note suggesting I contact the lab if I wanted to pursue paternal identification. They could run the sample against other family members. I already knew what they'd find. Sophie had Tom's eyes, not mine. Tom's quick wit. Tom's way of tilting her head when she was thinking. How had I been so blind? Sophie found me there an hour later, still holding the papers. "Dad? What's wrong?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw Tom's face staring back at me. The resemblance was undeniable once you knew what to look for. "Sophie, sit down. We need to talk. You're scaring me." I handed her the test results. She read them twice, her face growing paler with each word. "I don't understand. What does this mean?" "It means Dana lied about more than just her affairs. It means—" I couldn't finish the sentence. "You're not my father?" Sophie's voice was barely a whisper. "Not biologically. But Sophie, listen to me. That doesn't change anything between us. You're still my daughter in every way that matters." Sophie started crying, deep sobs that shook her whole body. I pulled her into my arms, and we sat there holding each other while our world collapsed around us. "Who is it?" she asked eventually. "Who's my real father?" I couldn't tell her. Not yet. Not until I figured out how to handle Tom's betrayal without destroying what was left of our family. "I don't know yet. But we'll figure it out together." That night, after Sophie went to bed, I sat in my workshop in the basement, surrounded by the projects I'd built over the years. Birdhouses, jewelry boxes, a dollhouse I'd made for Sophie's 8th birthday. Evidence of a life that had been built on lies. My phone rang. Dana. "Jack, we need to talk." "Do we?" "I think we've said everything that needs saying. Please, just give me 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at Murphy's bar, the same place she'd picked up Calvin the night of the accident. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Dana looked terrible. The bruises from the accident had faded to yellow and green, but she'd lost weight, and her hands shook when she reached for her drink. "I know about the DNA test," she said without preamble. "Of course you do. You're the one who's been lying about it for 20 years. Jack, I need you to understand." "Understand what?" "That my wife's been screwing my brother since before Sophie was born? That I've been raising his child while he played uncle?" Dana flinched. "It wasn't supposed to happen. Tom and I, we were drunk at your bachelor party." "My bachelor party? You screwed my brother at my bachelor party?" "It was one night, one stupid mistake. I didn't know I was pregnant until weeks later, and by then we were married, and I thought—" "You thought you'd just lie about it forever?" "I thought it didn't matter. You loved Sophie. She loved you. What difference did biology make?" I stared at her across the table, this woman I'd shared my life with, and felt nothing but contempt. "The difference is that I had a right to know. Sophie had a right to know. Instead, you let me play the fool while you and Tom laughed behind my back." "We never laughed. Bull crap. I saw the emails, Dana. I know what you really think of me." Dana started crying, but I felt no sympathy. She'd used up her lifetime supply of my compassion. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "I want us to try to work this out, for Sophie's sake." "Sophie doesn't want anything to do with you. And neither do I." I left her sitting there and drove home, my mind already working on the next phase of my plan. The confrontation with Tom happened the following Saturday. I'd spent the week preparing, gathering evidence, building my case like the engineer I was. Every detail planned, every contingency considered. I called Tom and told him we needed to meet at the old family cabin up north. Dad had left it to both of us when he died, though Tom never used it. Too rustic for his refined tastes. Tom arrived looking nervous, probably expecting another angry confrontation. He wasn't wrong, but he wasn't prepared for what I had planned. "Jack, I'm glad you called. We need to clear the air about all this." "Do we?" "I think the air's pretty clear already." I led him inside the cabin, where I'd set up a laptop and printer on the old wooden table. The screen showed the DNA test results. "Sophie's your daughter," I said without preamble. Tom's face went white. "What?" 20 years, Tom. 20 years I've been raising your child while you played the devoted uncle. Did you laugh about it at Christmas dinner, at her birthday parties? Jack, I swear I didn't know. Bull crap. Look at her, Tom. She looks exactly like you. Everyone always said she had the family nose, the family eyes. They were right. Just the wrong side of the family. Tom slumped into a chair, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. "What do you want?" "I want you to disappear. From my life, from Sophie's life, from this town. I want you to transfer your half of this cabin to me, resign from your firm, and find somewhere else to practice law." "You can't be serious." "I'm dead serious. Because if you don't, I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you are. Your partners, your clients, your wife, your kids. Everyone will know that the great Tom Halverson is nothing but a backstabbing piece of crap who's been screwing his brother's wife since before their daughter was born. My wife doesn't deserve... Your wife deserves to know what kind of man she married, just like I deserve to know what kind of brother I had." Tom sat there for a long time, staring at the DNA results. Finally, he looked up at me. "What about Sophie?" "She's my daughter, too." "Sophie doesn't want anything to do with either of you. You lost that right when you chose to lie to her for 20 years. Jack, please. You have 1 week to make your decision. After that, I start making phone calls." I left Tom sitting in the cabin and drove home, feeling lighter than I had in months. The truth was finally coming out, and the people who'd betrayed me were going to face consequences. But I wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. Chapter 5. The reckoning Eddie Palumbo called me on Monday morning with news that made my day. Dana's law firm just suspended her pending an investigation into misappropriated funds. Turns out when you steal 40 grand to support your boyfriend's drug habit, people notice. What about her license? The state bar is opening their own investigation. Between the theft, the professional misconduct, and the criminal association, she's looking at disbarment. Good. What about Calvin's trial? That's where things get interesting. His lawyer's trying to cut a deal, but the DA's not interested. They want to make an example of him, especially after the local news picked up the story about the accident. The local news story had been a gift from heaven. Prominent attorney's affair with drug dealer leads to near-fatal crash had run on the front page of the weekend edition, complete with photos of Calvin in handcuffs and Dana being wheeled into the hospital. Sophie had been thrilled when she saw it. Good. Let everyone know what kind of person she really is. My daughter, and she was still my daughter, DNA be damned, had been my rock through all of this. She'd testified to the state bar about Dana's affairs, provided evidence to Eddie, and stood by me when the whole town was talking about our family drama. "Dad," she said over breakfast that Monday, "I want to testify at Calvin's trial." "Sophie, you don't have to do that." "Yes, I do. He could have killed us that night. Mom was too drunk to drive, and he was high on cocaine, grabbing at her while she was behind the wheel. I want everyone to know how reckless and dangerous he is. It'll be hard. His lawyer will try to make you look bad. Let him try. I'm not the one who was screwing a drug dealer." The trial started the following week. Calvin had cleaned up for court, new suit, fresh haircut, the whole respectable citizen act. But it didn't matter. The evidence was overwhelming. Sophie's testimony was devastating. She described the night of the accident in vivid detail, how Calvin and Dana had been drinking and doing drugs, how Calvin had been groping Dana while she drove, how his grabbing for the wheel had caused the crash. "I begged my mother to call a cab," Sophie said, looking directly at the jury. "I told her she was too drunk to drive." But she said she was fine, and he encouraged her. He said real women could handle their liquor. Calvin's lawyer tried to cross-examine her, suggesting she was lying to protect her mother. Sophie shut him down cold. "Protect my mother? My mother nearly got me killed because she was more interested in impressing her boyfriend than keeping her daughter safe. Why would I protect someone like that?" The jury convicted Calvin on all charges, 20 years without parole. As they led him away in shackles, he turned and looked at me one last time. "This isn't over," he mouthed. I smiled and waved goodbye. Dana's divorce hearing was scheduled for the following month, but she tried one last desperate play first. She showed up at the house on a rainy Thursday evening, looking like a ghost of her former self. "Jack, please, can we talk? We've talked enough. I know I made mistakes." "Mistakes?" "Dana, you've been lying to me for our entire marriage. You stole money from your firm to support your drug-dealing boyfriend. You put our daughter in danger because you were too selfish to call a cab. Those aren't mistakes. That's who you are." "I can change." "No, you can't. And I wouldn't believe you if you tried." Dana started crying, but I felt nothing. The woman I'd loved was gone, if she'd ever existed at all. "What about Sophie?" "She's my daughter, too." "Sophie doesn't want anything to do with you. She's made that clear. You turned her against me." "I didn't have to turn her against you. You did that all by yourself when you made her keep your secrets for 4 years." Dana left without another word, and I never saw her again. The divorce was finalized on a cold February morning. I got the house, the savings, my pension, everything. Dana got nothing except her legal bills and a ruined reputation. Eddie shook my hand outside the courthouse. "Congratulations, Jack. You just won the divorce lottery. It doesn't feel like winning. Trust me, it's winning. Your ex-wife is broke, unemployed, and facing disbarment. Your brother's resigned from his firm and moved to Florida with his tail between his legs. Calvin's in prison. You've got your daughter, your house, and your dignity. That's a win in my book." Sophie was waiting for me at home with a bottle of champagne and a smile that reminded me why I'd fought so hard. "So, Dad, what do we do now?" "Now? Now we figure out how to be a family again. Just the two of us." "Sounds perfect to me." That night, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Sophie asked the question I'd been dreading. "Dad, do you ever regret finding out the truth? About everything?" I thought about it for a long time before answering. "No. The truth hurt, but living a lie hurt worse. At least now we know where we stand." "I love you, Dad. You know that, right? Biology doesn't change that. I love you too, sweetheart. More than you'll ever know." As the stars came out over our quiet neighborhood, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. The war was over, and we'd won. Not through violence or revenge, but through truth and justice. Dana, Tom, and Calvin had all faced consequences for their choices. They'd lost everything that mattered: reputation, family, freedom, dignity. They'd thought they were so clever, so much smarter than the simple engineer who just wanted to love his family. They'd been wrong about that. Dead wrong. Chapter 6. The Final Hunt. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I thought the worst was behind us. Sophie had returned to college, Dana had moved to another state to escape the scandal, and Tom was practicing law in Florida under a cloud of whispered rumors. Life was finally returning to normal. I should have known it wouldn't last. The first sign of trouble came on a Tuesday evening in March. I was working late in my basement workshop, refinishing an antique chair I'd bought at a garage sale, when I heard footsteps on the porch above. The footsteps were wrong, too heavy, too deliberate. Sophie was still at school, and I wasn't expecting anyone. I grabbed a hammer from my workbench and crept up the basement stairs. Through the kitchen window, I could see a figure moving around my backyard, checking the doors and windows. In the dim light from the street lamp, I recognized the silhouette. Calvin Ames. My blood ran cold. Calvin was supposed to be in prison for the next 20 years. What was he doing in my backyard? I called 911 from my cell phone, whispering my address and the situation to the dispatcher. Then I called Linda Grady directly. Jack? What's wrong? Calvin Ames is outside my house. I thought he was in prison. He is in prison. Are you sure it's him? I'm looking right at him. Stay on the line. I'm sending units to your location. But Calvin wasn't waiting for the police. I heard the sound of breaking glass from my back door, then footsteps in my kitchen. Jack! Calvin's voice echoed through the house. I know you're here. We need to talk. I stayed in the basement, hammer in one hand, phone in the other. Calvin's footsteps moved through the house above me, searching room by room. You cost me everything, Jack. My freedom, my future, my woman. Dana was mine, and you took her away from me. I almost laughed. Dana had been using Calvin just like she'd used me. The poor bastard actually thought she loved him. Calvin found the basement door and started down the stairs. I positioned myself behind my workbench, ready to defend myself. There you are. Calvin stepped into the light, and I saw he was holding a knife. Time to settle accounts. Calvin, you're making this worse for yourself. The police are on their way. Good. Let them come. By the time they get here, you'll be bleeding out on your workshop floor. Calvin moved toward me, but he'd made a crucial mistake. He didn't know my workshop like I did. I'd spent years down here, building furniture and fixing things. I knew every tool, every hiding spot, every potential weapon. Calvin was operating in my territory now. As he lunged at me with the knife, I sidestepped and grabbed a can of wood stain from my workbench. The liquid splashed across his face, temporarily blinding him. Calvin screamed and stumbled backward, clawing at his eyes. I used the distraction to grab a coil of rope from my supply shelf. You son of a bitch! Calvin swung the knife wildly, but he couldn't see where I was. I circled behind him and tackled him to the ground. We fought for control of the knife, rolling across the concrete floor between workbenches and tool cabinets. Calvin was younger and more desperate, but I was bigger and fighting for my life. I managed to pin his wrist against the floor until he dropped the knife. It's over, Calvin. No, it's not. Even if you kill me, there are others. Dana made a lot of enemies when she stole that money. Some of them blame you. What are you talking about? You think I'm the only one who lost money because of your bitch wife? She was skimming from client accounts for years, using the money to pay for her affairs. When the firm went down, a lot of dangerous people lost their investments. Before I could respond, I heard sirens outside. The police had arrived. Down here, I shouted. In the basement. Linda Grady was the first officer down the stairs, her gun drawn. She took in the scene. Calvin tied up on the floor, me standing over him with a hammer, wood stains splattered everywhere. Jesus, Jack, what happened? Calvin broke into my house and attacked me with a knife. I defended myself. Linda cuffed Calvin and read him his rights while other officers secured the scene. As they led him away, Calvin turned back to me. This isn't over. Dana's debts are your debts now. They'll come for you. Let them come, I replied. I'm ready. But Calvin's words haunted me over the next few weeks. I hired a security company to install cameras and alarms around the house. I varied my routine, took different routes to work, stayed alert for signs of surveillance. The paranoia was exhausting, but it probably saved my life. The second attempt came a month later, as I was leaving work one evening. Two men in a black SUV tried to run me off the road on the highway outside town. I'd seen them following me for several miles, so I was ready when they made their move. Instead of panicking, I accelerated and took the next exit, leading them through a maze of residential streets I knew by heart. The chase ended when they tried to corner me in a dead-end alley behind a shopping center. I drove straight at them, playing chicken with 2 tons of steel and glass. They blinked first, swerving into a dumpster while I drove past them and back onto the main road. I called the police from a safe distance, but by the time they arrived, the SUV was gone. Linda met me at the police station to file a report. This is connected to Calvin's warning, isn't it? Probably, but I don't know who's behind it or what they want. Maybe it's time to consider relocating. Start fresh somewhere else. I thought about it, but the idea of running away stuck in my craw. I'd already lost too much to Dana's lies and betrayals. I wasn't going to lose my home, too. No, this is my house, my town, my life. If someone wants to come after me, they can bring it on. Linda shook her head. You're stubborn as hell, Jack Halverson. It's kept me alive this long. The final confrontation came on a rainy Saturday in May. Sophie was home from college for the weekend, and we were working in the garden when a car pulled into the driveway. 3 men got out, expensive suits, cold eyes, the kind of people who solved problems with violence. I recognized the type from construction sites and union negotiations. Sophie, go inside and call the police. Dad, go. Now. Sophie ran for the house while I faced the 3 men. The leader was tall and thin, with silver hair and dead shark eyes. Mr. Halverson, we need to discuss your wife's debt, ex-wife, and I don't owe anyone anything. That's where you're wrong. Your ex-wife stole $200,000 from our client's investment account, money that was supposed to be held in trust. Take it up with her. She's not my problem anymore. Actually, she is. You see, the money was stolen from a joint account that bore your signature. That makes you liable for the debt. I almost laughed. You want to collect a debt through extortion and intimidation? Good luck with that. The leader smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Halverson, you misunderstand the situation. This isn't a negotiation. That's when I heard the sirens in the distance. Sophie had called for help, and the cavalry was coming. The 3 men heard the sirens too. The leader's expression hardened. This conversation isn't over. Yes, it is. They got back in their car and drove away just as the police arrived. Linda was in the first car, along with 2 other officers. Friends of yours? Linda asked, watching the car disappear around the corner. Just some guys who wanted to discuss my ex-wife's debts. I told them I wasn't interested. Jack, this has to stop. These people aren't going to give up. Then I guess we'll have to make them give up. That night, Sophie and I sat in the kitchen, making plans. Dad, maybe Linda's right. Maybe we should move somewhere else. Running away won't solve anything. These people will just follow us. Then what do we do? I thought about it for a long time before answering. We end this, once and for all. The plan was simple, elegant, and completely legal. If Dana's former clients wanted to collect a debt through intimidation, I'd give them something better, the truth. Eddie Palumbo still had contacts in the media from his prosecutor days. Within a week, investigative reporters from 3 different newspapers were digging into Dana's theft, her clients' backgrounds, and their methods of debt collection. The story that emerged was bigger than anyone had imagined. Dana hadn't just stolen money from a few accounts. She'd been running a systematic embezzlement scheme for years, skimming funds from dozens of clients to finance her lifestyle and affairs. When the law firm collapsed under the scandal, some of those clients had lost their life savings. Others had lost money that belonged to even more dangerous people, loan sharks, bookmakers, organized crime figures who didn't take losses lightly. The newspaper series ran for 5 days, complete with photos, financial records, and interviews with victims. By the time it was over, Dana's former clients were facing federal investigations for racketeering, money laundering, and extortion. The men who'd threatened me were arrested at their hotel the morning the final article ran. The leader, whose real name was Vincent Torino, was wanted in 3 states for loan sharking and intimidation. Linda called me with the news. "It's over, Jack. The feds have rounded up the whole crew. They won't be bothering you again." "What about Dana?" "She's been arrested in Arizona on federal charges. Looks like she'll be spending the next 10 years in prison." I hung up the phone and looked around my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd discovered Dana's betrayal, where Sophie and I had planned our defense, where we'd weathered the storm together. Sophie came downstairs, fresh from her shower, looking young and beautiful and alive. "So? What's the verdict?" "It's over. We won." Sophie threw her arms around me, and we stood there holding each other in the morning sunlight streaming through the windows. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now? Now we live our lives. We move forward. We don't look back. Together? Always together." As we sat down to breakfast, I reflected on everything that had happened over the past year. I'd lost a wife, a brother, and the illusion of the perfect family. But I'd gained something more valuable: the truth and the knowledge that Sophie and I could survive anything as long as we had each other. Dana, Tom, Calvin, and their associates had all learned the same lesson: that actions have consequences, that lies eventually catch up with you, and that sometimes the quiet guy in the corner is the most dangerous enemy you can make. They'd underestimated me, thinking I was just another clueless husband who'd roll over and accept whatever they dished out. They'd been wrong about that, dead wrong.